Without further ado, allow me to welcome our acclaimed and admired speaker of tonight, Arun Chetty. Arun is a part of the core founding team at Razorpay, an online payments company that enables money movement for business in India. He currently heads the design team there, and over the last 5 years, he has worked with multiple teams to make finance simpler for online businesses in India. Apart from design, he also leads a voluntary team called Culture Committee at Razorpay, where he primarily takes care of scaling up the organization's culture. Outside of work, he actively mentors budding designers and product managers in his free time. A very warm welcome to you, Arun. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us tonight. Handing the session over to you now.
Fair. Am I starting directly, Shama, or is Pinkesh starting?
No, you can go ahead and start the session.
Fair enough. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time and attending this session. So I have very little time to kind of go over a few topics. Let me quickly share my screen.
Yep. You can share your screen now.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. So I'm going to touch upon these couple of topics. One is the various design roles that you see in the industry. And the second is, what is the career trajectory that a particular designer has in the industry. So let me start off by taking you through the, the journey of a particular product at any company, right? You start with ideation and then the product kind of goes live. So let's look at how design enters at what position and what do designers even do at what point in the entire roadmap, right? So it starts off with your UX research, where the designers are collaborating with the research team and product managers alike. They go do the market research, they find out the user pain points, the user personas, who are we building for, etc. Then comes your interaction design or UX design. So this is where the designer kind of takes up all the pain points that were uncovered during the research session. They prioritize all these pain points, and then they put the user flows, information architecture, low fidelity wireframes, etc. Once you have all of these pain points properly prioritized, and once you have figured out solutions for all of these pain points, is where designers work on the UX copy, the low fidelity wireframes, and then they test it out again, right? Then comes your the beautification part of the design, where visual designers or UI designers come into the picture. They work on a high fidelity prototype, a proper built-in solution. They test it out with usability testings. Again, over here, I'm showing a very linear flow, but in reality, it's a looped flow where you always come up with multiple prototypes. You test them actively. And once you are satisfied with the solution that you have, is where you need the help of a graphic designer along with a marketer, so that you can put up your email campaigns with a lot of illustrations, video marketing, websites, etc. Right? So if you look at the entire spectrum, you have research, you have UX design, you have UI design, you have graphic design, etc. At very large companies where there is enough luxury to hire as many designers as possible, what they do is for every single segment, they have a different designer working on it. For example, at huge companies like Google, you can also see designers only working on prototypes, and they're called as prototype designers. But here in India, with design being a very nascent vertical as of today, and we not having enough luxury to kind of hire as many people as the Silicon Valley counterparts do, is where design more or less kind of bottles down to these major four verticals as such. So the first being research, second is UX design, third is UI design, and the fourth is graphic design or communication design, right? One more very interesting fact over here is, like other roles like product management or engineering, like software engineering, where backend developers, front-end developers, they have standardized designations across companies. By this, what I mean is, a front-end developer at, let's say, Flipkart is more or less doing the same thing as a front-end developer, let's say, at Razorpay, the place where I work, right? But in design, the standardization of roles is yet to happen. So you see a lot of fancy titles like interaction designer, UX designer, product designer, etc. But more or less, they do the same thing by the end of the day. So this is how I'd like to overarch all of these four verticals, right? Like, I'd like to just simply call them as product designers. And as product designers, you're responsible right from figuring out a problem statement to the solution for these problem statements and then taking it live along with the marketer. Now that I've touched upon, scratch the surface of what design roles are there in the industry, let me also talk about the career trajectory. Again, I'll not go deeper into it. I'll just present a high-level picture over here. So most designers start off at the junior levels where you're teamed up with senior designers, where you have a team of sorts. You work on very small scale problems, small scale features. You work closely with your product managers, your engineers, etc., to ship very small scale challenging problems. As you progress in your career is where you kind of step into the senior roles, and this is where challenges become a bit more heavy. This is where you take on heavier challenges. This is where you take on bigger projects, bigger problem statements, etc. And once you reach a certain point is where there is a pivot in your career. One of the legs of this particular pivot is you being an individual contributor. Consider your principal designers or your design architects, where you're not managing a team, but you're heavily focusing on shipping products. You're actually hands-on working, individually contributing to the product roadmap. The other leg of this pivot is where you're a people manager. You have a team of your own. You're setting up the entire team, right from hiring the designers, whom to hire, how many to hire, how to hire. You're also figuring out the growth path of every designer in your team. You're figuring out when to promote, how to promote these folks. You're also figuring out how to kind of help them with learning and development programs, right? You more or less become your design managers, design directors, head of design, etc. So this is a very high level picture of how designers' careers generally look like in an industry. Now that we've touched upon it, let me give you a few tips as to how you can grow as a designer, irrespective of what role you play in a company and what stage you have, right? So as designers, it is obviously expected of you to kind of take up design challenges day in, day out. But it is super important for you also to touch upon a tinge of product management, figure out how product managers work. You need to also, be at a situation where if you were given an opportunity, you should be able to take up product management as well. Figure out problem statements, figure out solutions, etc. Figure out the entire business strategy as to what markets do you even ship out your product, and what different business units do you put up, what different challenges can you take up as a company. Figure out how strategy kind of works in a given environment. Third thing is leveraging data. It is very important for you as designers to take decisions backed by data. By this, I don't just mean you putting up entry points for data, but also figuring out how to analyze given certain amount of data. You should be comfortable enough taking up data, analyze it, and then come up with design solutions. The fourth thing that will help you as a designer is knowing a bit of sales as well. How is the competition like? What is the USP of your product compared to your competition? How can you market it, right? The last and final thing for a designer, for someone to grow as a designer, is you also having a bit of knowledge about how to brand and market your product. You should know what is the tone of voice that is required. You should know whom to contact. You should know how to market your particular product. What is the go-to market strategy like? Does social marketing work or does TV ads work, right? You should be at a position where you should be able to figure out all of this. You should be able to strategize the entire go-to market strategy, right? So while as a designer, you'll be heavily focusing with your product managers, your business managers, your engineering team, your data team, and the rest of your design team. It is absolutely important if you kind of go out once in a while, touch upon all of these 5 peripheral verticals as well to help you grow as a designer. To put it in a very simple term, how I'd put is a designer should be able to be a pseudo product manager for a given product. That is when I consider that a designer has reached a very certain level where I can consider that the designer's growth has been very optimum. That's about it from my end for today. Shama, over to you.
Thank you so much for the great insights, Arun. So for the next part of the session, please allow me to welcome our very distinguished and renowned speaker of tonight, Professor Pinkesh Shah.
Hey, that's awesome. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. So let me please allow me to give you a quick introduction to you, sir. So to the audiences. So Professor Shah is a senior faculty director of programs at the Institute of Product Leadership and was most recently the Global VP of Product Management at McAfee. So Professor Shah, a very warm welcome to you, and please take the session forward.
Thank you, Shama. Good to see you, Arun. I love the new hair. Looks like COVID has not only transformed all of us, the way we work, but obviously the way we look and the way we present. So good to see you again, and a very happy evening to the folks in India. It's an early morning here for me in Houston, Texas. So good morning to folks who are joining from this part of the world. I honestly, it's a small crowd, and I'd rather keep it more interactive and have you the opportunity to ask questions to both of us. But since Shama asked me to present a few things, I'll quickly, rapidly go through what I consider, kind of three quick career tips. As a global VP of products, I've hired product managers, product designers, and I like what Arun said. There's a lot of confusion in these titles. I think I'd say focus more on the role and the scope of what a particular company offers, especially if you're looking to join a corporation, if you're looking to start your own venture. Obviously, you have to play multiple roles, and design is becoming the new differentiator. I think in today's world, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, it was more is better. I think the last 7 or 8 years, the world has kind of revolved around. It's not about what more is better. It's about how you've done things, right? So design itself is a differentiating, business element, not just the features and the functions of the product or the service, right? And so this is a fairly hot space. I would say, there are very few good designers around the world, and especially in the Indian ecosystem, even a bigger shortage. So for those who are kind of already in that space and want to kind of grow further, great. Those who are wanting to get in, even more exciting times. Yeah. So I'll kind of share quick three tips and then kind of stop and pause and take some questions, because I think Arun has done a fantastic job already laying it out, right? So my first tip is, when you are trying to make that shift, look at all three lenses, right? The hiring manager is not just looking at you just at the functional skill level, right? So in this case, in today's context, it's all about design skills. So your design skills will fall into the functional skills. If you're a product management or a product marketing person, again, that functional skills would be product management skills. So that's important. And I think Arun has kind of broken it down into 4 parts, and I'm going to show you another chart which I saw somewhere, which I thought was also pretty good explanation. So that's functional skills, but don't forget the other 2 on the left and the right. Your ability to tell a story is your leadership skills. Your ability to communicate your prototype is your leadership skills, right? And it's less to do with design, it's more to do with leadership. And so if you can't do that, it's very difficult for you to crack that interview or to be able to crack that career growth. So keep that perspective, right? And also the domain. You need to understand the user. That's obvious. But what you also need to understand is the domain in that in the area that you're trying to design something for, right? So if you're building a thermometer, well, you need to understand more than just the user research, the industry, the domain, the medical field. If you're building an antivirus software, well, you need to understand a little bit about security. If you're in Razorpay, you need to understand how e-commerce and payment gateways work. You need to have at least a high level understanding of the context of that domain. So keep that perspective. A lot of times people think, well, I know how to prototype, and so I'm now the best designer, and 10 more people are waiting for me to offer me a great promotion. Sometimes that might be limited, right? So just kind of keep that perspective from a practical things of what we've seen in the field. Second tip, go from what I call a utility player, and I think what Arun called an individual phase or an individual area, whether it's interaction design, user research, visual design, graphics design. These are all individual strengths within the design space. But try to evolve to become what I call a full stack professional, right? And so what is a full stack professional? In a context of product management, this is the wheel, that has been standardized now for thousands of professionals who use this to map themselves as to where they fall in the skill for each of these 5 buckets. So having all 5 categories, from market analysis to strategic planning to product planning to go to market to sales enablement, allows you to become a full stack product manager. Now, while there are many product managers who are only going to do, let's say, requirements management, for example, that's a utility player, right? And so if this is an example of product management full stack, let me show you a chart which I saw somewhere else and I really liked it. A full stack description of a design career, right? And so it starts right from the left, where somebody's just focused on the problem area, right? What's the problem? User research, going into the very depth of ethnography to figuring out problems that customers don't even know how to articulate yet, right? All the way to the right, you have your solution space, which is where the icons and colors and iconography and typography and layouts and the visual side of it, right? On the solution side, on the interface side. So now, right from that problem to the solution, you have a bunch of roles within the design spectrum. And what we mean uh, uh, by full stack is the ability for someone to be very good at something, but also have the broad reach across the spectrum, right? It's kind of very, very important. And I think Arun's slide was a lot more elegant and simpler, I think, to understand. So I really think, I hope you took some pictures and will focus on that one. Now, what we really mean by full stack is also getting into cross-functional skills. And I think Arun talked a little bit about it. Good designer, when you grow, when you might get into the design space, it's okay to have a few skills out of the full spectrum. But as you grow in the design space, you better be cross-functional, right? You need to know a little bit of everything. It's kind of what we call the cross-functional specialist. You need to be specialist in something, but you need to be cross-functional. And so my summary for tip number 2 is try to create a career path plan for yourself over the next several years to become a full stack designer. And if I were to put a formula, and it's kind of very hard to put a formula for design, but if I were to, it would be a full stack designer is somebody who not only understands UX design, which is the user experience part of it, but also UI design, which is the whole visual and graphics design side of it, but also product design. Who's the customer? Why would they use this in a certain flow, in a certain way? What are the alternatives available to that customer? Why should they use your product, your app, your widget, your service? All these are product consideration. What are the analytics of the onboarding and the usage of that product? Once the product is on board, once the user is onboarded, what are they doing, right? Analyzing that to further improve, all of that is product design. And then finally is your business design. Financial models, how much are they paying? Are they going to pay? Is this free? Is the free with the intent to go to premium, right? That's why the word freemium, if you have heard of this word, a lot of these solutions like LinkedIn and Gmail, all of these are freemium, right? Dropbox, you start with free, and eventually if somebody wants to move up to upgrade, you start paying, and so that becomes freemium. All of these considerations is business design. So a full stack designer is what your goal ought to be. Even though you may start with one, develop a longer term path, and visibility for your growth. And my last, tip is this whole notion of cognitive bias. And cognitive bias is a very fancy term. If you've not heard of it, just do a quick Google search and you'll find lots of good material on it. But simply put, cognitive bias means you think who you really are not, right? And I know that sounds confusing, but let me give you an example. I think I'm Shah Rukh Khan, or I look like one, like a star, but the mirror shows up once in a while and says, nowhere close, right? So we think who we are, who we're actually not. And this is a big blind spot in everybody's career. I have that blind spot in my life, on the personal front as well. I think I'm very healthy. My wife thinks otherwise. And we both have an argument till the blood test comes back and says, you know what, the blood test shows a little bit of cholesterol. So until that external validation happens, we may think we know a lot of things. In fact, this quote is a very good one from Paul. He said, look, everybody has an opinion about design, especially interfaces, right? Every user knows what they like, what they don't like, and that's what they think that they're hence an expert, but they're actually not. So knowing is not the same as having the skill. That's the summary of my tip. Knowing is not the same as having the skill. In fact, executive education is mapped out into 4 levels of knowledge. For many of you who are seriously looking to invest in learning, make sure that you also invest in the right tool for the right job, for the right price, at the right time in your career. Your first level is the outermost layer of learning called awareness. You happen to know a bunch of buzzwords, you happen to know enough to have a dinner conversation, and that's pretty much an awareness, right? A lot of people build awareness through e-learning, video-based learning, blogs. You keep on reading and so you become aware. That's not skill, that's just awareness. The next level deep, as you go deeper into the layer, is what we call literacy. At this particular junction, you now have contextual understanding of those buzzwords, right? You will use them in sentences. You will have conversations around it. A lot of people do these certifications, 2-day, 3-day workshops, and that's a great way to build literacy, your ability to communicate and understand at a buzzword level. Let's say if it's design, you know the difference between empathy mapping and design thinking, or Gestalt's law and typography. You can meaningfully create conversations. That's still not skill. The third level is the skill now, which is the little bit more inner. If you look at the sphere, it goes a little deeper, where you not only know how to do things, you have the theory and the framework, you've applied it in a real problem context, in a real situation, in a real play, either at work or in school, but you've applied it to a real project. And you've done this repeatedly with a coach, where the coach is monitoring, coaching, giving you feedback to do course correction. And once you do an n number of times, you now have built skill, right? So when we say that knowing is not the same as skill, make sure that you remove your blind spots. You may think that you know the difference between cobalt blue and crimson blue, and hence you have a good design for visual. That may not be true. Just because you know it doesn't mean you have the skills for it, right? And of course, the last part is the expert. People like Arun, who are not only expert in skilled in their own function, but are now paying it forward, right? Spending time with the community to educate others. You're actually, inside a company, you'll be setting up teams. You'll be setting up the right processes of how to hire a designer, for example, if you are an expert, right? So 4 levels of learning is very, very important, and map yourself back to which level you are, to remove that blind spot, right? So I just want to kind of share some most commonly observed career tips that I see sometimes alumni struggle with. I spend a lot more time with alumni as I facilitate some courses in the program, and with the 2,500 alumni who graduated, these have been the top kind of areas of blind spots. So I just thought I'll share some of that with you guys, and with that I'll also pause and open it up for questions, because that's probably the best value of your time and our time together today.
Yes, thank you, Professor Shah, for the great insights. I encourage the audience to go ahead and ask your questions in the Q&A section, or you could also raise your hands and I can unmute you. So let's have an interaction with the speakers. So while the audience is getting to it, so we have a question in the Q&A window already. Can we take that?
Sure.
Okay. So the first question is, how does someone from a sales and marketing background transition to UI UX design? What would be the top things to focus on? Arun, would you like to take that first?
Yeah, sure. There's no name on it, but true. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question, right? Like, how can someone take up UX or UI design, being outside of design, right? But again, the example over here states about sales and marketing, right? One advantage that you already have is being in sales and marketing. You already know who you're talking to, right? As a salesperson, you're selling your product to someone, and as a marketing person, you're marketing your product to someone, right? That someone is your user. So you need to figure out what problems and pain points does these users have as of today. And then can you put up a design level solution to it or not, right? Can you put up a product level solution to it or not, right? I'd say start over there. Figure out what are the top 2 or 3 problems that your current users are facing. Then try coming up with multiple solutions for each of these problem statements. If you're already at a company, observe how your designers are already working, and that should be a great start for you.
I think it's a very overloaded question because there are multiple paths of entry that one can take, when you are in the sales and marketing side. The good news is that it's doable. My recommendation is start from, if you paid attention to Arun's slide, he started from the left side, right? Let me also go back and show you the version of the slide that I had. So if you notice this particular spectrum, I would say as a sales and marketing person, start from the left. As you enter into the design career path, start from the left, because you will probably more aware of the user, the domain, the competition, the market, because you've been in sales and marketing. It'll be easier for you to enter the design world from the left. It's possible to enter from the right as well, but right will require, I recommend right for those who are visual designers, graphics designers, people who've done some kind of artwork before. It'll be easier to glide in from the right. Of course, no matter which direction you enter, once you enter, you have to become a full stack designer. But I would recommend you start with a product management, product designer, user experience designer type of career path. Spend a few years, maybe 1 or 2, and then develop the rest of it, would be my recommendation. I don't know who
Right.
asked that
Professor
question,
Shah,
but
in addition to that question, actually, we do get this question often. Is coding, programming skills necessary to be a UX designer? This is an assumption that a lot of people in the audience have that. Do you need to have these skills? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll let Arun also talk about it. Different people can have different opinion on this one. It's a big debate that's going around in the world for a long time. I'll tell you, I have hired hundreds of product managers, designers in my career path, and never once have we asked for whether you have coding experience or not. Now, having said that, I do know that my colleagues at Amazon and some of the other tech companies may prefer to have somebody who comes with that software or technology or some kind of coding background. So I've seen this happen in the industry as an exceptional case, but by and large, no. I don't think you need coding experience at all. Now, the reason, by the way, even the Amazon folks who are asking for that experience or that background, you have to understand the context behind the request. The reason they want you to know this, or they prefer people coming from that background, is because you're dealing with your audience, which is highly technical as an engineer, because you're writing requirements for an engineer and writing requirements for a highly technical product for a software engineer who will consume. Now, if you don't have the vocabulary to speak with them, to have the context with them, your ability to convince them about the vision, about the requirements, about the priorities will become slower. And so to remove that inefficiency, given a choice, an Amazon would prefer between 2 product management candidates, one with software background, one with not, they would probably prefer the software, right? In these types of companies. So it does exist, but by and large, no. I don't think you need any kind of hands-on coding experience to become a product designer or a product manager, right? Arun, what's the scene at Razorpay?
Sir, you've put it very greatly. It's not a mandatory, criteria as such, but having that knowledge always helps. Be in communication, or even for a designer, if you have that understanding of how APIs work, it's always helpful for you to figure out the ideal UX flow around a given technical API, or the other way around, right? Where you can go back to your engineering team and then communicate that this is the ideal flow and this is how I want the APIs to be structured. So it's not a mandatory criteria as such. But as Professor Pinkesh has already mentioned, it's good to have. That's about it.
Thank you for the clarification. So we'll take this next question from Shannon. He asks us, does quality over quantity matter when securing a design role?
Oh, sure. I'll take this up, right? I
Yes,
guess,
please.
Shannon, you're mentioning by quantity, I mean the number of projects in your portfolio. I'd say it doesn't really matter as such, as long as you're a great designer. As Pinkesh has already mentioned, right? Like the hiring managers generally look at how you're able to, solve a particular problem when given it to you, right? So overall quality definitely overtakes quantity. A lot of projects under your portfolio with subpar solutions or suboptimum solutions, I don't think that's a great sign.
Yeah, I would say in today's world, most professions, design in particular, this will be very, very true, Shannon. Quality, detail, eye for detail, going much deeper in the context is much more appreciated than just kind of being, all over the place. One of the things that I like to hence call out is this word cross-functional specialist, right? Gone are the days where you can be, jack of all trades and master of none. I think it's the horrible version of whoever came up with this line has misguided thousands and thousands of people in this world. Jack of all trades, master of none is the worst advice that you can take from anyone in the context of careers, right? And especially in today's world. There was a time perhaps where that was okay, become a general manager, little bit of finance, little bit of HR, little bit do an MBA, and so you're not deep in anything, but you're still having the so-called, in the industrial age, it made sense because there were, workers and the economy was different, and you need somebody to kind of manage. In today's world, that is absolutely, um, not relevant. I think you need to be a specialist. Now, you need to be a cross-functional specialist. But you need to be a specialist. You need to be deep enough into one area that you like, that you're passionate about, across the 4 zones that I think Arun very nicely pointed out. Pick one as your strong base, right? You're the best visual designer, let's say, and you know a little bit of UX design, you know a little bit of product design, you know a little bit of finance. That's okay, but you need to be the best in one thing, and then also expand as a cross-functional specialist. So I would say yes, quality is absolutely high requirement.
Great. Thank you for that question, Shannon. We had an interesting comment on that from both of our speakers. So we'll take the next question from Yogesh. Being a backend software developer for multiple years who wants to shift towards UI and UX design, how will this program help envision the proper career path? Professor Shah, would you like to take this?
Yeah, so by the way, a lot of project managers, a lot of software engineers, a lot of business analysts are all moving now towards product design roles, product management roles, and doing it very successfully. I would say in the last survey research that happened in 2018 in India, almost 72% of product managers had actually come from a QA, a quality engineering or development background in India, right? Which is unusually high number, but that's the reality in India. So the good news is that hence that path is fairly well proven and is possible. Now, the way these programs work, and by the way, this is true comment for, I also facilitate programs in IIM in US here. Most programs which are effective will have what we call the 3 components, right? Three kind of immersive points to build that skill. In fact, before I tell you the 3 immersive skills, let me tell you an analogy. Sometimes it's easier to understand with a quick analogy. It's like swimming, right? And if you have to learn swimming, you need 3 things to really learn swimming the right way. First, you need instructions. You need to know how to move your hands at a 45-degree angle, and how many times do you take breath, right? There are some routine basic things you need to understand. There are instructions on how you swim. Second, you need a swimming pool to practice that swimming, right? Because without that, the instructions will only give you what I call literacy. If you remember the 4 layers of learning, You will have buzzwords, but you would have not done anything with it. So now you need a swimming pool to practice, which is what we call a sandbox environment for you to practice, apply repeatedly. The third, which is a very, very crucial part of learning, is the coach. Imagine if you're swimming in a swimming pool and if nobody's watching you, you may be making bad strokes. You may be wasting energy and get tired in 2 laps. Where in reality, if you had done it correctly, if you were bending your knees a little bit more, if you were flapping a little better, you would have made 4 laps. But only a coach who's watching you one-on-one, working with you, looking at your work, giving you feedback is the only way to fix that. So instructions, swimming pool, coach. These are the three cornerstones of any experiential learning, right? Now, coming back to your question, how will this program help? This program is using the same experiential tenets that we just talked about in this example of swimming, right? And so it allows you to not only understand the subject, but also build projects through assignments and assessments. You will be surrounded by experts like Arun, who himself is a senior designer at Razorpay and who's now going to coach you personally, each one of you one-on-one, to make sure that your projects, your assignments, your assessments are in line with what the industry would want. Have you really applied it the right way? Have you made some mistakes, course correction, redo the projects? And so that experiential learning allows you to do two things. First, it allows you to learn and build skills, not awareness, not literacy, but actually skills. And second, it allows you to build a portfolio. So if you were to go for an interview, and say, hey, look, I want to get into a user experience design role, and let's say you would come to me if I'm hiring. My first question is, okay, show me what you've done. Why should I hire you? It's not because of your resume. Everybody has a great resume, by the way, in today's world. And trust me, everybody has the right, what we call keyword stuffing, right? So, all the right keywords are all sprinkled everywhere. And that's good. But that's not, hence it's not going to cut it, right? What you need to show me is proof of work you have done. Show me a real prototype. Show me a real user experience flow. Show me a real, empathy map that you've drawn for a given project. So now these projects that you'll be working on in the program allows you to build your portfolio. Even though you have 0 years of experience in design, you actually come out with a portfolio, and that's what's going to predictably crack the interview. That's what's going to impress, people around you, right? So that's the gist of what will happen. Of course, there's a lot of other bells and whistles. There are 5 modules, 5 months, each one having its own, weekly sessions. Go to the website, spend some time to get the operational details of it. But the outcome is more important, right? You are going to be job ready, industry ready, career growth acceleration ready, when you go through an experiential program like this.
Beautifully explained, Professor Shah. Thank you for that. So we'll take this next question from Santosh. Okay, Arun, you would like to take this. How to grab the designer job after having a 10 years of experience in finance domain? Will the start journey be as a design intern?
Okay, so I'd like to take cues from what Professor Pinkesh has
Sure.
answered in the last question, right, Santosh? So if you look at it, it all starts with you having some experience. Again, by experience, I mean a portfolio, a showcase of your work, so that I, as a hiring manager, can know how you can work and how you can solve problems, right? Now, how do you start it? Is it a design intern, or do you directly go for a design role, or do you do some contract work, or do you do some freelance work, right? It depends from opportunity. It depends from how your appetite is currently, right? So there's no hard and fast textbook answer for this, that every designer will start as a design intern. There are enough designers out there who worked at design studios part-time and then became full-time product designers or UX designers. So I'd say do scout for multiple opportunities, not just stop at design internships. Also, start scouting for freelance work. Start doing some side projects on your own. Build up your portfolio, and once you're confident enough, maybe then you can kind of directly approach your full-time roles.
Right. I hope that answers your question, Santosh. So we'll take this next question from Purushottam. So he asks us, how do you influence other teams as a designer? For example, do you need to lead the engineering team with your design solution, or does the engineering team guide your design with a product feature solution?
Oh, that's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Uh, so design, as Professor Shah has mentioned, right, is evolving, and gone are those days where everything used to follow a waterfall model, where one person used to identify a problem, another team used to take up the solution, and then finally design used to come and then just put visuals, right? The times are changing. Design is now more or less at the forefront along with product and engineering, right? So depends from company cultures. The place where I work at Razorpay, we've made sure that design culture is right there from the start. We are right there, right from figuring out the problem statement to shipping it out, and then also going back to the market, figuring out how the product is functioning. Now coming to the first part of the question is really beautiful, right? How do you influence other teams? This is where your communication skills, the leadership skills that Professor Shah has mentioned, come into the picture. How do you influence other teams, and not just the engineering team, by the way? There are a ton of other stakeholders that you need to kind of explain or convince, and then bring them on your same page for them to go along and fix your solutions, right? So there are multiple solutions on this. One recent thing that I've picked up is start having my engineering leads and marketing leads and business leads along with me when I go do that user research. When they understand the user's problems firsthand, then they'll also be having that skin in the game, right? So that kind of helps. Again, but I'd like to know what Professor Pinkesh has for this.
So I think this is again a vast subject. There are 11 principles of influence. There are 7, what we call conflict management inventories to deploy. So leadership is a vast subject, and one should spend some time studying it as well. Uh, but nevertheless, in the context of time that we have today, I will not go too much into details. But I would still insist that remember the three the three kind of lens that we talked about, right? Your leadership skills, your functional skills, your domain skills, and the more you have an aggregate score higher across all three, the higher the chance that you will be able to rise in your career path much faster than anybody else, right? Now, the how part is a very detailed conversation. I encourage you to spend some time, perhaps do some quick Google search, sign up for a free course on Udemy. I know the Institute has some e-learning programs as well. So spend some time on that. But it is a very, very crucial skill. And it doesn't matter who influences whom. My short and sweet summary is that if you have influencing skills, you will end up influencing others, irrespective of what the culture and the team around is, right? So it's important for you to build that core skill, and don't worry about because you don't control the culture of the company, right? You don't control and even if you join a company, that company is going to change when the management team changes and something else is going to happen. So it's important that you develop this capability yourself.
We have a question from Joey as well. I think he wants to ask the both of you, what has been your inspiration? Where do you get the inspiration from to go ahead and be experts in your domain?
That's a loaded question. I mean, I get inspiration from all kinds of things, multiple times in a day. So I'm slightly different, perhaps, or a little crazy than most others. But I think the underlying, coming back to the context, I'm trying to apply some context to your question in confine it to today's session, which is more on design careers. I think if you have the passion to solve unsolved problems, this is the best career path for you. Never once will you feel bored or tired, ever. It's been 18 years for me, and I'm still feeling fresh and renewed in this space, right? You never get bored. See, unlike project management and unlike some of the other roles and professions, there's a time when which you feel you're kind of stuck now. You've done everything there is to do, and you kind of been there, done that, and you feel like you're not firing all on your cylinders. Design and product is not like that, because what you solve for today is different than what you will solve for tomorrow, right? While the principles and skills may be the same, the application keeps on changing. And so I think there's never a dull moment. But I think if you like solving unsolved problems, and if that's what excites you, I think that's where I get in my most of my inspiration from. That, why is this not solved, and why has somebody not solved it, and can I solve it faster, better, cheaper, in a more delighting way from a design perspective. I would say that's the crux for me.
I think that was beautifully put, right? I guess that's the same for me as well. And if I were to extend that just a little bit, the domain that I'm in is the finance domain. And if you look at it, there's more people today than yesterday who are paying online, right? And that's a good enough challenge for me to solve. To give you a fair example, my father, who's above 50 years, 5 years ago, there was no trace of him doing any online payment. But as of today, right from the electricity bills to paying rent, to buying online, buying tickets, etc., everything is online. And I somewhere think that I had some level of influence, just like, and not just on him, but some millions of users in India who are currently paying online, right? So for me, the pace at which the domain is changing, and as Professor Shah has rightly put, right, the amount of unsolved problems that are there in this particular domain itself, that itself kind of drives me a lot.
I think Arun just reminded me of another very important source of inspiration that many of us have, and I think it may be applicable to some of you who are here today, is to do something that creates an impact. At the end of the day, while there are many noble professions, right from being a nurse or a doctor all the way to a janitor, and everything in between, right? And all of those are noble professions, by the way. There is no such thing as good or bad. But design and product is one of those things where you have impact to a much higher level of degree by making one small change, right? I mean, one small change in Razorpay, one small change in Zomato, one small change in Google search can create impact to millions and millions, right? And so the feeling, the elated feeling that your piece of work as a designer is getting used by thousands of people around the world, solving their problems, delighting them, making their lives easier, is a very gratifying feeling for a lot of us, right? And so I think that's the kick in this career path. So I don't know if you've answered your question, Joey, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Shah. So, but we do have a little bit of time to take this one last question. So, this is from Kavin Raj. How UX UI design will evolve as AI or machine learning design?
Again, a very, very good question. In interest of time, I have to run in the next 3 minutes, so I may not be able to give you a longer version. But I strongly encourage you to look at some of the digital learnings on the IPL website. There's a course. There's a short video course called Data Science for Business Professionals. And I encourage you to take a look at that. I think it has lots of exciting answers to this question of yours, and a lot of examples to that you can learn from. But the short summary of this is, I think design is going to become almost invisible. In fact, great designs in the future are going to be invisible design. You can't even see it. It's designed so well that you can't see the design, right? Unlike what we see 10 years ago, where a pretty picture or a nice interface and colors. But the fact that it's a data-driven system where machine learning is making decisions, AI is driving decisions within the product, within the service, it's kind of automated and automatic both, right? Automated is different than automatic, but assuming that if both are there in the product, that's the beauty. Now the role of design is even more crucial. So that how do you make design so seamless that it's almost invisible? And that takes a lot of work in design to make it that seamless, right? But it's a very exciting space, and design will also be evolving into designing what we call interfaceless design. and we're already seeing this. Voice gestures is a great example. Forget about clicking, tapping, and where the button is. Now we're doing voice gestures. So that's also design, but solving a problem in a very different way. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at that for more details in the answer.
Right. Interfaceless design. I'm going to check it out tonight after this session.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Professor Shah. But audience, thank you for the participation. And in view of time constraints, we'll have to end the Q&A session here. But please go ahead and book your 30-minute session, one-on-one session with the faculty for any further question. Design career is not a subject that you can get answers to within an hour. And hence, we have made various platforms available to address all your queries. So go ahead and book your session right away. We have enjoyed having you with us, Arun and Professor Shah. It has been a complete pleasure. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and amazing insights drawn from your years of research and experience in the industry. I believe our audience can definitely benefit from the methods you suggested and get ahead in their career. So thank you again for joining in, making the session an amazing one.
Absolutely. Pleasure. And wish you all the very best.
Thank you. Thank you, audience, for joining in and asking such really good questions. So we have these mediums available. So go ahead and put in an email at engaged@ipl.edu.in or connect with us on our website. Thank you for participating, folks. And also do not miss out the opportunity to apply for the Norman Scholarship. And with that note, I conclude tonight's session. Have a great night. Happy learning and stay skilled.